Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. The stormy beginning. Jaden woke up to the sharp buzz of his alarm clock at precisely 5:30 a.m. With a groggy hand, he silenced it, groaning softly under his breath. The familiar routine began as he pushed back his threadbare Batman blanket and sat up in his small, neatly kept room. Despite the early hour, he moved quietly to avoid waking his mother, who was in the next room. She had worked a grueling double shift at the hospital last night, and Jaden was determined to let her sleep as much as possible. Pulling on a pair of faded jeans and a plain gray t-shirt, Jaden caught a quick glance of himself in the mirror. At 17, he was lanky but sturdy, with dark curls that were starting to grow unruly. He made a mental note to get a haircut soon, though he knew their tight budget didn't leave much room for extras. His mom worked tirelessly as a nurse, juggling endless shifts to keep their small family afloat, and Jaden did his best to lighten her load. The kitchen floor creaked under his feet as he tiptoed in to brew a pot of coffee. Their old Mr. Coffee machine sputtered as it came to life, filling the air with the rich aroma that always reminded Jaden of his mom. While the coffee brewed, he grabbed a banana and scribbled a note. Made coffee. Left early to help Mr. R. Love you, Mom. He stuck it to the fridge with one of their mismatched magnets, a collection of keepsakes from places they'd visited over the years. The Pine Grove apartment complex where they lived wasn't much, but it was home. The walls were thin, the windows stuck, and the heating was unreliable, but his mom had worked hard to make it cozy. Family photos adorned the walls, and her nursing school diploma held a place of honor on the living room shelf. As he stepped outside, the crisp morning air greeted him. His well-worn sneakers squeaked against the damp pavement. The neighborhood was just starting to stir. Jaden exchanged a quick wave with Mr. Chin, who was already sweeping the sidewalk in front of his store. The scent of freshly baked bread from Maria's bakery drifted down the street, mingling with the earthy smell of an overnight rain. "Morning, Jaden," Mr. Chin called out, pausing his sweeping. "Tell your mama the jasmine tea she likes is back in stock." "Will do, Mr. Chin." "Thanks," Jaden replied with a smile, picking up his pace. Rodriguez Grocery was a 15-minute walk from his apartment. By the time he arrived, Mr. Rodriguez was unlocking the door. The older man gave Jaden a warm smile as he approached. "Morning, Jaden." "Early as always." "Morning, Mr. R." "You know me, always ready to get started," Jaden replied, stepping inside. Together, they began their well-practiced routine. Jaden helped unload crates of fresh produce and stock the shelves, while Mr. Rodriguez reviewed inventory. The store wasn't large, but it was a cornerstone of the neighborhood. Families came not just for groceries, but for the warm camaraderie Mr. Rodriguez provided. He extended credit when times were tough and remembered everyone by name. "How's your mom doing?" Mr. Rodriguez asked as they arranged tomatoes in neat rows. "She's still working crazy hours, but she's hoping to switch to regular shifts soon," Jaden replied. Mr. Rodriguez gave a knowing nod. "Hardworking woman, your mama. And you, always here, always helping." "You're a good boy, Jaden." Jaden shrugged, trying to hide the blush that crept into his cheeks. "Just doing what I can." As the morning wore on, regular customers began to trickle in. Jaden knew most of them by name. There was Mrs. Patterson, who always bought 6 bananas, never more or less, Tom, the auto mechanic who swore by his daily energy drink, and the twin girls who giggled over candy before school. By the time his shift ended, the store was bustling with activity. Jaden's school day passed in a blur. Despite his exhaustion, he stayed focused, knowing that every grade counted if he wanted a shot at college. He dreamed of studying engineering, though he knew it would take a miracle to afford tuition. Still, he held on to hope. The afternoon found him back at Rodriguez Grocery for a second shift. As the sky darkened, ominous rain clouds gathered overhead. "You should head home before it starts pouring," Mr. Rodriguez urged, noticing Jaden glancing nervously at the window. "I can close up tonight." Reluctantly, Jaden untied his apron and grabbed his backpack. "Thanks, Mr. R. See you tomorrow." He stepped out just as the first raindrops began to fall. Within minutes, the drizzle turned into a torrential downpour. Jaden hunched his shoulders against the rain, muttering under his breath about leaving his umbrella at home. As he hurried down the street, something caught his eye. A sleek black SUV sat at the curb, hazard lights blinking. Beside it stood a man holding an umbrella that seemed ill-suited for the storm. The man's suit was soaked, and his expression was one of frustrated helplessness as he stared at a very flat tire. Jaden's first instinct was to keep walking. His mom's warnings about strangers echoed in his mind, but something about the man's demeanor gave him pause. Maybe it was the way he stood there, shivering but determined, or maybe it was simply Jaden's own tendency to help whenever he could. "Need a hand?" Jaden called out, raising his voice to be heard over the rain. The man turned, his face lighting up with relief. "Oh, thank goodness." "Yes, I'd appreciate that. I've been trying to figure this out, but I'm afraid flat tires aren't my area of expertise." Jaden stepped closer, careful not to startle him. "I can take care of it. Name's Jaden." "Richard Fletcher," the man replied, extending a hand. "I owe you one, Jaden." "Let's just get you back on the road," Jaden said, setting his backpack under the man's umbrella to keep it dry. As Jaden worked, Mr. Fletcher made conversation, asking about Jaden's life and how he learned to change tires. Jaden explained that he'd picked up the skill from Tom at the auto shop. Despite the rain, the two fell into an easy rhythm. By the time Jaden finished, both were soaked to the bone, but the spare tire was securely in place. "You're a lifesaver," Mr. Fletcher said, handing Jaden a business card as they parted ways. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." Jaden pocketed the card, assuming he'd never hear from Mr. Fletcher again. But as he trudged home in the rain, he couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter had been more than a random act of kindness. Little did he know, this chance meeting would change his life forever. The unexpected visitor. The next morning, Jaden woke up to the faint aroma of coffee wafting through the apartment. He blinked at the clock on his nightstand, 6:15 a.m. His mom was already up. Sliding out of bed, he stretched and padded into the small kitchen, where he found her sipping from her favorite blue mug. "Morning, baby," she said, her voice warm despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "Morning, Mom. You're up early. Didn't think you'd wake up before me today." She smiled and gestured to the coffee pot. "Needed a little pick-me-up before my shift. Thanks for making the coffee yesterday." Jaden grabbed a banana from the counter and sat down across from her. "Anything exciting happen at work?" "Nothing out of the ordinary," she replied with a sigh. "What about you? You got caught in that storm yesterday, didn't you?" He hesitated for a moment, then recounted his encounter with Mr. Fletcher. "It wasn't a big deal," he concluded, shrugging. "Just helped the guy change a flat. He gave me his business card, though. Said to call if I ever needed anything." His mom raised an eyebrow. "Business card? What kind of guy carries those around these days?" Jaden chuckled. "The kind who drives a car that probably costs more than this whole apartment complex." "Well, you've always had a big heart," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "Just be careful, okay? Not everyone who looks nice has good intentions." He nodded, not thinking much of it. The conversation shifted to her work schedule and his plans for the day. After breakfast, Jaden grabbed his backpack and left for school, his mind already occupied with the day ahead. It was a typical day at Eastside High. Jaden sat through math, history, and science, barely staying awake. By lunchtime, he found himself at his usual spot in the courtyard, eating a peanut butter sandwich while chatting with his best friend, Malik. "Man, you're like a superhero or something," Malik teased when Jaden told him about the flat tire incident. "Helping some rich dude in the pouring rain? If that was me, I'd be like, sorry, bro, I got places to be." Jaden laughed. It wasn't that big of a deal. Dude looked pretty helpless, though. Felt bad for him. You. Too nice for your own good, Malik said, shaking his head. Bet you $5 you'll never hear from that guy again. Jaden grinned. You're probably right. By the time Jaden finished his afternoon shift at Rodriguez Grocery, the sun had already begun to set. He was halfway home, walking along the familiar streets of his neighborhood, when he noticed something unusual. A sleek black SUV, eerily similar to the one from the night before, was parked in front of his apartment building. Jaden's steps slowed. His heart quickened as he approached. The SUV's polished exterior reflected the orange hues of the setting sun, and its tinted windows gave away nothing about who might be inside. As he climbed the stairs to his apartment, the vehicle's driver's side door opened, and a sharply dressed man stepped out. It was Mr. Fletcher. Jaden, he called, his voice carrying across the quiet street. Jaden turned, his surprise evident. Mr. Fletcher? What are you doing here? The older man approached, his demeanor as polished as his car. I hope I'm not intruding, he began. I wanted to thank you again for your help yesterday. You saved me a great deal of trouble, and I'd like to repay your kindness. Jaden's brow furrowed. You didn't have to come all the way out here for that. I was just doing what anyone would. Mr. Fletcher smiled. Not everyone would stop in the pouring rain to help a stranger. You showed remarkable character, and I believe people like you deserve opportunities. Before Jaden could respond, Mr. Fletcher gestured to the SUV. I'd like to speak with you and your mother, if that's all right. I promise it won't take long. Jaden hesitated. His mom's warnings about strangers echoed in his mind, but Mr. Fletcher didn't seem dangerous. If anything, he seemed genuinely earnest. Okay, Jaden said finally. Come on up. Their apartment was small and modest, but Jaden had always taken pride in how homey it felt. As he opened the door, he called out, Mom, we've got company. His mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her expression shifted from surprise to curiosity as she took in Mr. Fletcher's tailored suit and confident posture. Good evening, ma'am, Mr. Fletcher said, offering a polite nod. I'm Richard Fletcher. Your son was kind enough to help me out of a difficult situation yesterday. I've come to express my gratitude. Nice to meet you, Mr. Fletcher, she replied cautiously, glancing at Jaden for an explanation. As they all sat down in the small living room, Mr. Fletcher explained his purpose. I won't take up much of your time, but I wanted to offer Jaden something in return for his kindness. I build my career on the principle that opportunities should be given to those who show potential and integrity. Jaden has both. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the coffee table. Inside is a full scholarship to any college of your choice, along with an internship at my company once you graduate. I hope this will help you achieve your dreams. Jaden and his mom stared at the envelope, stunned into silence. Finally, his mom found her voice. Mr. Fletcher, this is incredibly generous. But why would you do this for us? Mr. Fletcher's expression softened. Because someone once did something similar for me. I grew up in a neighborhood like this, raised by a single mother who worked herself to the bone. A stranger saw potential in me and gave me a chance. It changed my life, and I've been paying it forward ever since. Jaden felt a lump rise in his throat. He glanced at his mom, whose eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I don't know what to say, he murmured. Say you'll make the most of it, Mr. Fletcher replied with a smile. That's all I ask. After Mr. Fletcher left, Jaden and his mom sat in silence for a long time, the envelope still unopened on the table. Finally, his mom reached over and squeezed his hand. You've always been my little hero, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Now the world's starting to see it too. Jaden smiled, the weight of the day finally sinking in. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like it was filled with possibility. A world of possibilities. The envelope sat on the small coffee table for hours, untouched and yet dominating the room. Jaden's mom kept glancing at it as though it were a fragile artifact, and Jaden himself couldn't bring himself to open it. Part of him still felt like the whole situation was surreal, as if he'd wake up and find it had all been a dream. "Are you going to open it?" his mom finally asked, breaking the silence. Jaden hesitated. What if it's too good to be true? What if there's some kind of catch? His mom's expression softened. "Baby, sometimes good things happen without a catch. And even if there is one, we'll figure it out together. You've worked so hard for everything you've ever had. Maybe this is the universe's way of saying it's your turn to receive." Nodding, Jaden reached for the envelope, his hands trembling slightly. The weight of the paper felt heavier than it should have. He carefully broke the seal and pulled out a thick stack of documents. On top was a handwritten note. "Dear Jaden, thank you again for your kindness and integrity. Enclosed is a scholarship agreement that covers tuition, books, and living expenses for the college of your choice. Additionally, I've included an offer for a paid internship at Fletcher Real Estate Development. Please let me know how I can assist further in helping you achieve your dreams. Warm regards, Richard Fletcher." Jaden read the note aloud, his voice quivering. His mom's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Jaden," she whispered. This is everything." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Mr. Fletcher's team contacted Jaden to guide him through the scholarship application process, and Jaden found himself researching colleges he'd only ever dreamed of attending. His teachers at Eastside High were thrilled to hear the news, and even Malik couldn't hide his excitement. "Man, you're really doing it," Malik said one afternoon as they hung out at their usual lunch spot. "I'm telling everyone I know Jaden Carter's gonna be a big-shot engineer someday." Jaden laughed. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I haven't even started yet." "Still," Malik said, nudging him. "It's like you're living in one of those inspirational movies or something. You better not forget about us little people when you're famous." Despite the excitement, Jaden's life at home remained grounded. He continued working at Rodriguez Grocery, determined to save as much money as possible. He knew the scholarship covered everything, but he didn't want to rely entirely on it. His mom's work hours had eased slightly, and she seemed lighter, as if the weight of their financial struggles had finally begun to lift. One evening, as Jaden was restocking shelves at the grocery store, Mr. Rodriguez approached him. "Jaden," he said with a warm smile. "I hear you're leaving us soon for bigger and better things." Jaden looked up, surprised. "Who told you?" "Your mom mentioned it when she came by last week," Mr. Rodriguez replied. "I couldn't be prouder of you, kid. But I'll miss having you around here." Jaden's chest tightened. "I'll miss this place too. You've been like family to me, Mr. R. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done." "You've already thanked me by being the hardworking, kind-hearted young man you are," Mr. Rodriguez said, clapping him on the shoulder. "But if you really want to thank me, promise me you'll make the most of this opportunity. Go out there and show the world what you're made of." As the weeks turned into months, Jaden finalized his plans. He decided to attend a prestigious engineering program at a university just an hour away from the city. It was close enough to visit home on weekends, but far enough to immerse himself fully in campus life. Mr. Fletcher's internship offer loomed on the horizon, and Jaden was eager to prove himself worthy of the opportunity. The night before he left for college, Jaden and his mom sat together on their worn-out couch, flipping through an old photo album. The pictures chronicled Jaden's life, birthdays, school plays, and family gatherings. Each photo told a story of struggle and perseverance, love and hope. "You've grown up so fast," his mom said, her voice tinged with both pride and sadness. "It feels like just yesterday you were learning how to ride a bike, and now you're off to college." Jaden leaned against her, his head resting on her shoulder. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mom. Everything I am is because of you." Tears filled her eyes, and she wrapped her arms around him. "Promise me you'll never stop being the kind, hardworking person you've always been. No matter how far you go, stay true to yourself. I promise, Jaden said, his voice firm. The next morning, a group of neighbors gathered to see Jaden off. Mr. Chin handed him a bag of snacks for the road, and Maria from the bakery gave him a loaf of his favorite bread. Even the twins from down the hall came by to wish him luck. As Jaden loaded his bags into the car, he noticed Mr. Fletcher standing off to the side. The older man approached, extending a hand. "You're about to embark on an incredible journey, Jaden," he said. "Remember, the road won't always be easy, but you've already proven you have what it takes to succeed. Keep your head high and your heart open." Jaden shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for everything, Mr. Fletcher. I won't let you down." As the car pulled away, Jaden glanced back at his neighborhood, his heart swelling with gratitude. He didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but he felt ready to face them. For the first time in his life, the future seemed not just bright, but limitless. Building bridges and dreams. The college campus was a world unlike anything Jaden had ever known. The sprawling lawns, the towering buildings, and the energy of thousands of students all working toward their futures filled him with equal parts excitement and nervousness. Move-in day had been a whirlwind of introductions, schedules, and goodbyes. As he stood in his dorm room that first night, staring out the window at the city skyline in the distance, he felt the weight of this new chapter settle on his shoulders. He thought about his mom, probably sitting alone on their couch, already missing him. He thought about Mr. Fletcher, whose faith in him had made all of this possible. And he thought about himself, the boy from Pine Grove, standing on the cusp of something extraordinary. "You got this, Jaden," he whispered to himself, a small smile forming on his lips. Classes started the following week, and Jaden quickly found himself immersed in the rigorous demands of his engineering program. The coursework was challenging, far more intense than anything he had encountered in high school, but he refused to let it intimidate him. Every night, he spent hours poring over textbooks and lecture notes, determined to stay ahead. On weekends, Jaden explored the city with a mix of awe and wonder. The skyscrapers and bustling streets were a far cry from his quiet neighborhood. He found himself drawn to the city's libraries and museums, soaking in as much knowledge and culture as he could. It felt like the world was expanding around him, and he wanted to embrace it all. One of the highlights of his first semester was an invitation to a networking event hosted by Fletcher Real Estate Development. Jaden had received a personal email from Mr. Fletcher, encouraging him to attend. The event was held in a sleek downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the city. Jaden felt out of place at first, surrounded by polished professionals in tailored suits. But as he mingled and introduced himself, he realized how genuinely interested people were in his story. Mr. Fletcher spotted him from across the room and walked over with a warm smile. "Jaden, I'm glad you made it," he said, shaking his hand. "How's college treating you?" "It's amazing," Jaden replied. "Challenging, but in the best way. Thank you again for making this possible." Mr. Fletcher waved off the thanks. "You're the one putting in the work. I'm just happy to see you thriving." As the night went on, Jaden found himself speaking with architects, engineers, and project managers who shared valuable insights about their careers. By the end of the event, he had collected a small stack of business cards and a renewed sense of determination. The internship with Fletcher Real Estate Development began the following summer. Jaden was assigned to the engineering department, where he worked under the guidance of a seasoned mentor named Karen. She was a no-nonsense woman with years of experience and a knack for pushing her team to excel. "I hear you're the kid Mr. Fletcher's been talking about," she said on his first day, eyeing him critically. "Let's see if you're as good as he says." Jaden grinned nervously. "I'll do my best, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am." "Makes me feel old," she retorted, though her tone softened. "Call me Karen. And welcome to the team." Over the weeks, Jaden learned more than he ever thought possible. He shadowed Karen during site visits, assisted with drafting blueprints, and even contributed ideas during team meetings. Karen's initial skepticism melted away as Jaden's work ethic and natural aptitude shone through. "You've got potential, kid," she told him one afternoon as they reviewed a set of plans. Stick with this, and you'll go far. Back home, Jaden's mom couldn't hide her pride every time they spoke on the phone. "You're making me prouder every day," she said during one call. "The whole neighborhood is talking about you. Even Mr. Chin's been bragging to his customers like you're his own son." Jaden laughed. "Tell him I'll stop by when I'm home for break." But it wasn't just his neighborhood cheering him on. Jaden's story began spreading beyond Pine Grove. Local news outlets picked up on his journey, framing it as a tale of hard work and opportunity. One headline read, "From Pine Grove to Possibility, a young man's inspiring path to success." By the end of his internship, Jaden had not only gained invaluable experience, but also a clear vision of his future. Mr. Fletcher met with him on his last day to discuss what came next. "You've exceeded every expectation," Mr. Fletcher said, handing Jaden a letter. "This is a formal job offer. We'd love to have you join the team full-time after graduation." Jaden stared at the letter, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say you'll keep working hard, Mr. Fletcher replied with a smile. "And say you'll keep inspiring others the way you've inspired me." Years later, Jaden stood on the same stage where he'd once attended a Fletcher real estate development event. This time, he was the keynote speaker, addressing a room filled with young professionals, students, and community leaders. "Opportunities don't always come knocking," he said, his voice steady and confident. "Sometimes, they arrive in unexpected ways, like a flat tire on a rainy night. But what you do with those opportunities is what defines you. Never underestimate the power of kindness, hard work, and the people who believe in you." The audience erupted in applause, and Jaden's eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on his mom, seated in the front row. She was beaming, her hands clasped tightly together as tears of pride rolled down her cheeks. In that moment, Jaden knew he had fulfilled not just his own dreams, but also the dreams of everyone who had ever supported him. And though the journey had been long and challenging, it was far from over. For Jaden Carter, the road ahead was as limitless as the stars.